Today we're going to do a deep dive into Bryan Christopher Kohberger's background, which he's the suspect in the Idaho 4 case. If you didn't know, on November 13th of 2022, between 4:07 a.m. and 4:20 a.m., 4 University of Idaho students were murdered in their off-campus college home at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. And their names are Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, and Xana Kernodle. And I really hope that there will be full justice for these 4 lives that were so tragically and so brutally lost. They really had their whole lives ahead of them. They were all doing so well. They were so happy. And it's just, this case is just unbelievable what happened to them. So yes, a suspect was arrested on December 30th of 2022. Now, if you are brand new here and you don't know anything about this case, don't worry. You can just expand the description box. There's a case background right up there for you, as well as a link to the playlist so that you can go and do a deep dive starting today. I would first watch this video though, because I'm sure if you're new to the case, or even if you're familiar with the case, you're going to want to know, who's this guy? Tell me everything that we know about him. And so that is my goal for today, is to tell you everything that we know about him so far, based on, of course, public interviews, articles, all public record. Please note that this content is for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, like, and share. So there's his mugshot. That's actually the mugshot from the Ada County, Boise, Idaho jail, right? Because he had been moved he was arrested in Pennsylvania on December 30th of 2022 at his parents' house. Then he was extradited to Moscow, Idaho. Then the judge decided that a new venue is necessary for this trial based on how high profile this is. And so he's now sitting in the Ada County jail in Boise, Idaho. And obviously when you move from one jail to another, then there's a new mugshot. So that's what that is. Now, he was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of felony burglary, and he faces the death penalty. So if you look at those trial dates, the trial is scheduled to start with jury selection on July 30th of 2025, but then opening statements are scheduled to start on August 11th. And the trial is set to run to November 7th. That is a long trial. And let me quickly read you this snippet, which was published on December 30th of 2022, like the day he was arrested. This is what it says, quote, "This is not the end of this investigation. In fact, this is a new beginning," Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson said on Friday. "You all now know the name of the person who's been charged with these offenses. Please get that information out there. Please ask the public, anyone who knows about this individual, to come forward." He added, "Report anything that you know about him to help investigators and eventually our office and the court system understand fully everything there is to know, not only about this individual, but what happened and why." So I hope a lot of people came forward, and I mean to them, to the police, to the state, and told them everything that they know. But since then, since December 30th of 2022, yes, a lot of people have spoken to the media, former friends, acquaintances, all of that. So that's where all this information is coming from. So it's all very much public record that we're going to be discussing today. What I've done is organize that heap of information in chronological order so that we can really look at Bryan Kohberger's life. Like, what do we know so far? Obviously, it's based on what former friends are saying, colleagues, all of that. So Bryan Christopher Kohberger was born on November 21st of 1994 in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. He's the youngest of 3 children. He has 2 sisters, Amanda and Melissa. His father, Michael Kohberger, was a maintenance worker, and his mother, Marianne, was a substitute teacher. Bryan's parents filed for bankruptcy in 1995 and 2010. I don't think that's the most important. I just see the media mentions that quite a bit, and I think it's just because people are interested in Bryan Kohberger's psychology, if that affected him at all. So I'm just putting it in there. Former school classmates remembered him as a quiet, heavy-set boy who was picked on over his weight, sat up front in class, and kept mostly to himself. I find that really sad, when people are bullied and picked on. It's really unacceptable. It really shouldn't be happening. And so let me just say this, okay, as a disclaimer. So a lot of people say, why are you sympathizing with the killer? Well, even if you look at Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, serial killers, all these people, one can empathize with them from when they were children. But the minute that they decided to, and we're just talking in general now because he's innocent or proven guilty, the moment that they decided to kill people, obviously at that point, the empathy ends. But you can look at somebody's background, their life, their childhood, and see the pain and empathize with it. So, I kind of compartmentalize that. In that way, I feel very sorry for him. Now, one sister of his starred in a low-budget horror film, which was a slasher film called 2 Days Back. You can actually find the trailer out there if you want to check it out, or if you want to check out the whole movie. She is now a licensed school counselor. His other sister is a licensed associate counselor, and apparently they were let go from their jobs when Bryan was arrested. That just makes me mad because that is unfair. Like, your brother is arrested and charged with, yes, these horrific charges, but why did they get let go from their jobs? I hope that they're okay now. I've seen some more recent articles and it does seem like they're okay. They found other jobs in the same line of work. So here's just some pictures of the family, the mom, the dad, the mom, and the two sisters, of course. And it's a picture of Bryan Kohberger on the right-hand side there. He looks very different all the time, obviously in all these stages of his life and with all these photos that have come out since his arrest. Now, a former high school friend, Thomas Arns, said that he remembered Bryan as awkward and fairly reserved. They both loved to play video games and they enjoyed wandering wooded areas in the neighborhood after school and on weekends. So that's interesting because, of course, it's still something that he enjoyed all the way up to his arrest. He apparently loved stargazing, he loved nature, he loved hiking, especially at night. I wonder if they ever went at night, They didn't specify, but of course they were kids, so I don't know if they were allowed out at night. Probably not, but you never know. So he said that Bryan actually had a great sense of humor, that he was witty, and he was extremely observant, and it was described in all these articles as him, enjoying all his observations. Bryan struggled with his weight in high school, allegedly weighing over 300 pounds, which is 136 kilograms. And then he focused on that and lost 100 pounds. I mean, that's amazing. He lost 45 kilograms in his senior year. And according to his former friend, Jack Bayless, he was hospitalized for an eating disorder. And he had to undergo tummy tuck surgery because of the excess skin following his drastic weight loss. I mean, being a teenager, I think is already hard enough, going through puberty and all of that. But imagine going through such a drastic physical change because you're so tired of being bullied and picked on for your weight, because that's what so many friends say, is that a lot of people picked on him for his weight. I mean, that is just so unkind and unnecessary. And so he goes through that drastic change. He really focuses on losing weight. And then he has to undergo, as a teenage boy, tummy tuck surgery. Wow. So Dominic Clark, a former classmate, said, I remember seeing him and thinking it was a new student. He was so heavy and he lost so much weight. He almost looked sickly, or like it was an obsession. He also allegedly struggled with substance abuse, apparently a heroin addiction, according to former friends. His demeanor changed a lot and his friends started to cut ties with him. So apparently he actually turned into a bit of a bully. So that's not acceptable either. If you know what it feels like to be bullied, then you can't go on to not bully other people. But so often that happens, right? The cycle repeats, which is why bullying is just so painful.
He would just put me in, he would grapple me and put me in headlocks and arm bars and stuff like that.
So his aunt said it was above and beyond being vegan. Apparently his aunt and uncle had to buy new pots and pans because he would not eat from anything that had ever had meat cooked in them. He seemed very OCD, which, if family members noticed that, that would be quite spot on based on legal documents that we've read through recently, which say that he has been diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum disorder, as well as diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. So it does make sense. If they're like, wow, he's really OCD, that's not just a word, or a phrase to throw out there. He really suffered from obsessive compulsive disorder. Because it's so much more than just being a little bit neat or arranging things a certain way. It's intrusive thoughts. It's these obsessions. And people really suffer from it. So Bryan had a middle school crush, Kim Kennelly, who actually reached out to the FBI after he was arrested. Of course, following the murders and after his arrest, she was like, what? So she reached out to the FBI to tell them everything that she knows. So her pictures and everything is very much public. It's in all the articles. I didn't go like digging for it to put her here, because I'm sure that must be quite shocking to be like, wait, what? So this is apparently what she had told the FBI and what her mother had actually relayed to the media. So they attended Pleasant Valley Intermediate School in Broadheadsville, Pennsylvania together. Her mom said that Kohberger became relentless in his pursuit. I would like to insert the word entitled. It's just, you'll see why in a moment. Repeatedly leaving love letters in her locker and telling her that he liked her. He would always say, oh, Kim, I think you're very pretty. Just like weird comments, and she'd say, oh my God, leave me alone. Her mom said that she didn't give Kohberger the time of day, and she eventually told him to just buzz off. Her mom also said that, kids that age, they don't have, that soft way of saying, I'm so sorry, like the polite way of being like, I don't really feel the same way about you. She just told him, like, just leave me alone, which again is her boundary and her right. He's not entitled to her. And it seemed to me like this is why people, I think, come up with the incel theory about him, because that behavior would be quite spot on. Like, that's what I want. I want to be with the hottest girl in the class, and that's it. No one's getting in my way. I will have her. Like, oh my word. What if she says no? And they're like, no, that's not possible. I'm going to be with her. Like, no. She's her own person with her own mind and dreams and life. And she says, no. It seemed like he really, really struggled to accept that. And apparently it broke his heart. So she went on to become a high school cheerleader. And she's now apparently an occupational therapist in a different state. Now, somebody said to the Daily Mail, an anonymous source said, the whole clique of popular girls made fun of him in school. They were the cheerleaders and the ones that every kid had crushes on. So top right is a picture of that high school crush. Bottom right is a picture of 2 out of the 4 victims, one being the speculated main target, Madison Mogen, and next to her, Kaylee Goncalves, right? So that is just speculation. They literally, this is a quote again, they literally tortured him. Girls started making fun of him in middle school. Another former classmate said, it's interesting to me that the girls he's accused of killing were nice looking and seemingly popular, much like the ones that made fun of him throughout his childhood. So I think that already gives us just a little glimpse of a very plausible motive. I think the time at WSU, when he wasn't doing well as a teaching assistant, he was having issues with professors, he was having issues with the students, and then all sorts of things started stacking up. It probably was a super triggering time for him. However, that's not how one deals with trauma or triggers. No matter how much rage and pain one might feel, no. So anyway, in 2011, sophomore year, now listen to this. In 2011, sophomore year, he enrolled in a law enforcement vocational program at Monroe Career and Technical Institute, MCTI. He was a leader in his class. He took the class extremely seriously, said former administrator Tanya Carmela Beers. That's a picture of him. And here it says Bryan Kohberger, upper left, pictured in a 2010-11 Pleasant Valley High School yearbook photo as a sophomore. Takes part in a law enforcement class at MCTI. So you could see there he looks very focused. He's doing push-ups, very dedicated. And apparently it was his dream to become an Army Ranger or to work in law enforcement. So this program helps students eventually become a police officer, a firefighter, or EMT. His parents, who also worked for the school district, were active in attending meetings to help steer their son. So his parents were very supportive of this dream as well. They thought it would be perfect for him. So that's a guidance counselor, Donna Yolswiak, I hope I said her surname okay. She's who said that. Now guess what? Female students made formal complaints about him and he was removed from the program. If that sounds familiar to you, yeah, that's exactly what happened at WSU. Oh my goodness, he was kicked out of the PhD program. He lost his ability to be a teacher's assistant. So yeah, but it's in this way he needs to take responsibility for that, because female students were making complaints about him based on his behavior towards them. Apparently being very inappropriate towards females, very aggressive, very belittling. So he definitely had a bit of a grudge, which we can speculate could be from the past, right? So this is what Dominic Clark also said. If he liked or was interested in a girl and she wasn't, he didn't understand why, or just didn't accept her saying no and moved on. And so he would have been labeled as a creep or something along those lines. Well, yes, that's very entitled, I say again, because if he's like, I'm interested in that girl, if she's not, then she's not. You can't force that. So he worked at a fish hatchery in the summer of 2011, cleaning people's catch. He didn't work there for very long, by the sounds of it. So I think it was like 2 weeks or so. He didn't show himself to be, this is now a quote from Charles Conklin, the owner. He says, he didn't show himself to be very personable with customers and also wasn't improving at filleting the fish. He said, you've got to do a good job on your cuts. You have to be friendly to people. At least try to make some eye contact. It wasn't his thing. So it sounds like he was very angry at that point. That's just my opinion, my speculation. Just didn't want to deal with people. Also, I know that people diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder do struggle with eye contact. Either it's too little or it's too much, and they struggle to read those social cues, right? So he may have just been struggling with that as well. He then transitioned, because that didn't work out, the whole law enforcement vocational program, and then doing the summer job, which also didn't work out. So there's already two things there, just career-wise, that are just not working out for him, even though he's still a young boy. He was only 17, and trying all these things. So then he transitioned to the HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning program for his junior year. It's something that his dad did as well. So maybe he thought, okay, well, let me just follow in my dad's footsteps. Or maybe his dad said, why don't you just do that? I could teach you the ropes as well. But he dropped out, allegedly because he went to rehab, because he was struggling, with substance abuse. And so that is what's speculated is why he dropped out from that. He graduated from Pleasant Valley High School in Broadheadsville, Pennsylvania in 2013. I haven't seen any photos from like prom or something, and I have actually read that he finished high school by doing online classes. So it could actually tie into the speculation, the rumors that's out there that he actually dropped out from HVAC because he went to rehab, and then afterwards probably then finished his, high school education. Have you ever heard Bryan Kohberger's alleged rap song from 2011? So he would have been 17 years old. And it was under the name XR. And if that sounds familiar, it's because on a website, a blog called tuppertalk.com, Bryan Kohberger had a username called XR, spelled that same way, those with visual snow. Now, if you want a whole separate video where we go through all of his posts on that Tupper Talk website, let me know. I know we have briefly, covered some of it. We've taken snippets out of it. I guess the same way Dateline did. They took like a sentence out of it recently for their May 9th, 2025 episode, where Bryan Kohberger said he felt like this tired, sickly man, right? And before, he also said when he looks at his family, he sees them just as organic sacks of meat. So he's got some very interesting posts that he's made there. If you're interested in just, researching a bit about how his mind worked, in his life. So we can do that. Let me know in the comments. So anyway, I'm not going to read too much into this rap song, but what I've done is I have linked the song in the description box. So it's on SoundCloud, still there. I'm not going to play it in case he or his family members copyright strike me. Can you imagine if he's like, listen, that's my song. But anyway, here are the lyrics. And the only thing I want to point out is where he says, you are evil, but I'm the devil. And now I'm going regal. Don't F with us. I hope you learn your lesson. So that little paragraph there, as much as I'm not trying to read too much into it, just tells me he does have a lot of rage. At this point, he seems angry, fearless, and he's got that vibe of revenge. A lot of people speculate about the murders and what would the motive be. Would it be for revenge? So that's why I'm saying that would be then interesting if he's got all that pent-up anger. Would it be for a sexual motive? Would it be a combination of those? Or what? Let me know what you think in the comments as well. Now, high school friends described him as. So Lawrence Rosenberg said he was always a strange person. His female friend, Bree, said he wasn't outgoing at all, but also wasn't shy. They bonded over their love of the outdoors, which then makes sense based on, we saw on Dateline, if you've watched it, or if you watched my summary, a woman who was at a pool party, her name is Holly, and Bryan Kohberger had approached her and had put his number in her phone and texted himself. And she then texted her name back to him, just saying, okay, this is Holly. And then the next day, he texted her and said, I believe we talked about hiking. I really like that activity. Let me know. Thanks. And she just didn't find that tone or whatever, or him, very appealing, and she just never responded. But see, that's what he bonds over, is love of the outdoors, hiking. As we know from his defense team, he loved to drive around at night. He loved stargazing. We also heard from the Dateline documentary, the most recent one, that he went hiking by himself at night as well. I'm sure if he could have had a friend with him, wouldn't he have preferred that? It seemed to me like he was trying really hard to make friends and get a girlfriend, but just wasn't successful in doing that. But anyway, he liked hiking by himself at night.
I used to go on night runs with him because, like, I didn't want to go running at night by myself. So I would text him, like, hey, you want to go for a run? We go for 6-7 mile runs at night. So, like, when I saw who it was, I was just in, like, complete shock. I'm still kind of, like, shaking knowing about that. Like, it's just unreal to think somebody could actually do that to somebody. Like, it's absolutely, like, mind-boggling. Like, my adrenaline's still kind of running after finding that information out. So just, yeah, I feel for the families, and I'm just happy justice can be served now. So
that's a picture of Bree. And previously, when we did a live stream, it actually blurred out her face. However, she has since done an interview on YouTube on the DT show, and I have linked that for you if you want to go check that out as well. It's a little bit too long for me to go over everything there now, but maybe we can do some follow-up episodes if you want me to do a deeper dive into each individual friend's account of how they knew Bryan Kohberger.
I don't necessarily think he was a party guy, but I can say that Bryan, anytime we had like a little soiree or a get together, he was there, but he was very selective with his friends. So I don't think that he went to many parties other than just his few friends here or there where he knew it was a safe place for him.
Now, Nick McLaughlin said that he was friends with him in high school and vocational school. Yeah, the vocational school, that one he got kicked out of. And he described Bryan as down to earth, but said he later became aggressive, especially when he lost weight. Sounds like he became hangry. Huh? Anyway, he always wanted to fight somebody. He was bullying people. We started cutting him off from our friend group because he was a 100% different person. You just saw him becoming more self-destructive. He really stayed secluded, a classmate said. I also wonder if what he is accused of doing in Moscow, Idaho wasn't just like the ultimate self-destruction, like the final mark that he's going to leave. You know what I mean? I'm not sure. I'm just speculating. It just seems like there's a lot of things that stacked up there that would have reminded him of all of this in the past at that time. His former friends say that his drug use started with MJ. You can read on the screen what I'm really referring to, censoring for YouTube a little bit. They believe that he was seeking validation, and he later progressed to things like triple C and heroin. He even used a friend, Casey Arns, to pick up drugs from a dealer by lying that he needed a ride to pick up something for his aunt. So his friend, Casey, she shared the screenshot with the media, and the bluish purple is her, and saying, I would like to hand you a big congratulations for lying to me about driving you around. I should have added it up beforehand, but I thought I was doing something nice for someone. So thank you. If you would have gotten caught, I would have gotten in trouble just for driving you around, not even knowing why. Needles for your aunt? Wow. Real great story. Bye. And he said, I'm in rehab. So, oh my, we're seeing that, when they are always these perpetrators, he's innocent until proven guilty, is, playing the victim in every situation. Like, I'm in rehab. Not, well, so you could still say sorry, right? He said, I'm in rehab. She said, I know that. And he said, sorry again. Okay, well, there's a part apology. And she said, honestly, I don't want to hear it. So she was very pissed off with him. Obviously, imagine if the police pulled them over. They would have been in big trouble. She could have had time in jail for that, obviously.
I used to be friends with Bryan Kohberger. Again, after the whole heroin incident, I didn't know that he was literally making me drive to get him heroin until Brandon told me. So I messaged him a pretty rotten message just because I was pissed. I didn't know there was fucking heroin in my car. But this was, again, 2013. I was 2 years, graduated from high school. He then said he was in rehab. He would randomly message me after that. This is him mentioning he wanted to study criminal justice. Again, back in 2013, he was already hoping to do that, and then that obviously fell through because he said he went to rehab. But apparently he went back at it, and again, in 2017, that's when it seemed like everything was fine, and he was doing great for himself. So it was kind of crazy that this fucking happened. But yeah, this is also talking about, hanging out with Bryan, chilling with them, and then Brandon said they're like not friends anymore, and this happened a lot because of what he was doing, his addiction, and he had some anger issues. I know he did kickboxing to kind of help with that, but this is Brandon, the one I was just talking about. That's his wife, Brianna, and that's me. This was back in 2017. Obviously, that's Bryan. Still has the dead face that it's the eyes. I don't know.
So from 2013 to 2014, Kohberger worked at New York Pizza Girl. Rich, I don't know how to say his surname probably, Pasqua, worked there with him and said that he and Kohberger used drugs together. He said, and quote, he didn't have many friends, so he would do anything to fit in.
So we wanted to bring in someone that knew the person in a prior life. I want to bring in someone who knew him, the suspect personally, Rich Pasqua. You worked with him for a period of time. Rich, what can you tell me about the suspect? What was he like?
He was just your average guy. I met him through some friends, and they told me that he was a little weird, and he was a little socially awkward, I guess you could say. But he wasn't a bad guy. It was so long ago. It was like 2013, but he didn't have a girlfriend. I do remember that. And my wife went to school with him. They graduated together, and she doesn't remember him ever having a girlfriend, and I don't remember him ever having a girlfriend.
Shame. Okay, so he was a big heroin addict, and so was I. I work in treatment and everything, so at the moment, apparently, he's working in treatment, but back then I was using, and so that's how I know for a fact that he was using. I got high with him a couple of times. So that's one of the people who actually said, no, I literally saw him using, those substances, and he did. So that's his account. So in January of 2014, he reached out to Casey. We just saw the screenshots of the messages, the one who drove him around, and then asked how college was going. And she said she was very stressed out over school projects. He replied, be proud. You're making something of yourself. I'm not. Ha ha. He told her that life after rehab was dull. Thomas Arndt said, it almost seemed to me like he had a desire to be the alpha. For no reason, he tried to grapple me and put me in headlocks when I didn't want to. He tried to portray it as just boys being boys, but that's not the way I ever took it. Kohberger then took up boxing. He started running. He became friends with very athletic people, and he became aggressive or a bully himself. So it sounds to me like he was a wannabe jock. Like he really wanted to fit in with, the stereotype of the jocks and the cheerleaders. Clearly then to get to the girls. I'm speculating, but it just seems like that's the role that he took on there. So Thomas also said he always wanted to be dominant physically and intellectually. He had to show that he was smarter and bigger than you and try to put me down and make me feel insecure about myself. So much of that was a torment, and I didn't want to be around him anymore. Yeah, I mean, who wants to be around that? It sounds pretty narcissistic, if not all the other things we could say, right? His friend Thomas enlisted in the army and was deployed overseas. Bryan congratulated him and apologized for how he treated him when they were younger. He allegedly got sober in 2016, so he would have been 22 years old. Two friends who'd introduced him to those substances actually died. One in May of 2018 and one in March of 2021, apparently from ODing. So I wonder how much those losses affected him as well. In 2016, he started with the school district as a fill-in custodian and courier before moving into security part-time. He was later credited in December of 2018 with helping to save the life of an employee at the high school after a medical emergency. He resigned from his position in June of 2021, so as a security guard, after numerous complaints were received about him. So, oh no. So he does so well, and then numerous complaints are received about him. It's like a pattern. We're hearing that over and over and over. I mean, again, all the way up to the point when he was arrested and charged with these horrific crimes. So it's quite strange, that pattern he does. Like, does his ego get so fulfilled that then he just lashes out at everyone? Or does he sabotage? Or what the hell is all that about? Now, a former friend, Jack Bayless, said that Bryan reached out to him again in 2018 and told him that he'd been sober for 2 years. He said, I only used when I was in a deep, now this I do have to censor for YouTube, ending one's own life thoughts state. I have since really learned a lot. Not a person alive could convince me to use it. In 2018, Bryan earned an associate's degree in psychology from Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania. So now you could see, so he got sober, he started getting his life and his health all together. Then he went to the Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania and he got an associate's degree in psychology.
Jack Bayless met Bryan Kohberger in 8th grade when the two of them ran with a group of boys in this neighborhood near Albrightsville, Pennsylvania.
I want to say he wanted to be a cop since he was younger.
What kind of teenager was he?
He was pretty normal. He was definitely heavier set, and that caused issues in school.
He was a member of the, and I'm probably going to say it wrong, so you could just read it on the screen, Psi Beta fraternity, the Psychology Major Honor Society, and was a peer supporter who was trained to provide mental health support to fellow students. Well, that's where we can already start comparing him a little bit to Ted Bundy, which I'm sure is what he would just love everyone to do. But he seemed a little bit obsessed with Ted Bundy. But I'm pretty sure because his mother had advocated for Ted Bundy in the past to not be sentenced to death, it feels like Ted Bundy could have been quite a topic of conversation in the household. And I know many speculate that he aspired somehow to be Ted Bundy, even just based on the crimes that he's accused of. But that's pure speculation. But that was interesting that he trained to provide mental health support to fellow students, because Ted Bundy was also offering help actually to victims of SA and trying to teach people how to avoid being SA'd. Can you imagine? So he also made the Dean's List in 2018. So here's a picture of him. Bryan Kohberger, Psychology, Effort, Pennsylvania. Favorite memory or quote, he said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it," from Aristotle. Now, Bryan Kohberger was actually pictured sitting in the front row of a 2018 lecture by dystopian Handmaid's Tale author Margaret Atwood at a Pennsylvania college. This is very strange. Is this out of character for him? What was he doing there? He's holding a copy of Atwood's 1985 best-selling book. Just look at him. He's in a classroom filled with mostly women. There are men there too. I'm just like, what? And yeah, okay, just like his friends said, they knew him to sit in the front of the class. Well, look at him. He's sitting in the front of the class here in 2018 too. But that's an interesting photo that surfaced. Thank you to those on Reddit who actually posted that. Then you can actually see the shift in his demeanor, obviously, and just everything about him. He then studied criminology at DeSales University. In 2020, he graduated from DeSales University in Pennsylvania with a bachelor's degree in criminology. He studied under renowned forensic psychologist Catherine Ramsland, who interviewed the BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill serial killer Dennis Rader, and co-wrote the book Confession of a Serial Killer, The Untold Story of Dennis Rader. Yeah, the BTK killer with him. So, a lot of people speculate as well, could that be part of his motive? I really think it's like a combination of all these things. There's revenge, a sexual motive, wanting to be I'm just really speculating, wanting to be like Ted Bundy, wanting to impress this professor who worked very closely with serial killers to really understand them. So I don't know how much that influenced him, but, maybe he thought, well, one day she'll write a book about me, or one day, I will be studied that way. I don't know. So Catherine Ramsland confirmed that Kohberger took at least one course with her. Now, at DeSales University, this is how classmates described him. They said that he was the black sheep of the class. He preferred working alone. Josh Ferrero said, my first impression of him was that he's a little odd, but he's a nice guy. He was a really nice guy, and he does not look like that nice guy anymore. He kept to himself and had a deadpan look in his eyes if you looked at him. A former classmate added that the desks at DeSales were somewhat small, so Kohberger, who stands around 6 feet tall, barely fit in the small desks. He said he viewed Kohberger as an outcast because he was clearly someone who was very interested in criminal justice in a deep way. So again, it's like an obsession for him. He gets like hyper-focused on that, which again, if he was never charged with any crimes like he's been charged with, that's not a problem. He's very passionate about, what he's studying and doing.
Some things are a little odd with him. He was always like he had to be like the number one person in the room, explain things in like a really odd way that had to be really sophisticated way of explaining stuff.
They say he didn't take part in the extracurricular activities surrounding the major, such as the Criminal Justice Club and a Criminal Justice Conference many of the other students attended. While Kohberger willingly spoke in class, he didn't socialize with other students in the major outside of class. He's definitely articulate, but stuck on minor details and pointing out flaws in what the professor was saying, which again is something he did at WSU. This is still about DeSales, okay? We're not even at WSU yet. Sometimes he made good points. There were times that people were like, can you please shut up so we can move on? It's not really relevant, the former classmate recalled. So he asked a lot of questions and made a lot of points and arguments. Now, Brittany Slavin, who took several classes with him, said that he was a quiet person who liked to work alone, but came across as smart. She recalled that students were asked to look at photos of a crime scene and to figure out what happened in one of Catherine Ramsland's classes, and he was quick to come up with ideas. He seemed to show a particular interest in crime scenes and serial killers, she said. At the time, it seemed as if he was just a curious student, so if his questions felt odd, we didn't think much of it because it fit our curriculum, she said. Obviously, now in hindsight, they're all probably thinking about that. Like, wait, what? So the owner of Seven Sirens Brewing Company in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, thinks that Kohberger visited his bar a few times between 2020 and 2022. He allegedly made female patrons and staff feel uncomfortable and made rude comments about them. He said his name is Jordan Serelnik. He said it looked like him. His name was Brian, and it was in that time frame. Jordan had to tell him to behave while he was there and that he was making people uncomfortable. And he said, quote, he seemed dumbfounded, finished his beer, and I never saw him again. So if that was him, yeah, that sounds like it's spot on to how everybody else described him. Of May of 2022, he completed a Master of Arts in Criminal Justice at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. He received his master's through the university's online criminal justice program. In May of 2022 as well, a professor in the DeSales Criminal Justice Department, Michelle Bolger, helped Kohberger with a research project. Now, this is one we've spoken about before, which she says is completely normal given the curriculum. So he said, research participation needed. And he posted this online. Hello, my name is Brian, and I'm inviting you to participate in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. In particular, this study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense, with an emphasis on your thoughts and feelings throughout your experience. In the event that your most recent offense was not one that led to a conviction, you may still participate. Additional surveys are included after the open-ended section as to best understand your unique traits. The study should take about 15 to 20 minutes to fully complete. Now, these were some of the questions in that survey. Did you struggle with or fight the victim? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point. How did you travel to and enter the location the crime occurred? After arriving, what steps did you take prior to locating the victim or target, i.e. the person or object? Please detail your thoughts and feelings. Why did you choose that victim or target over others? Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or target? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling. how did you accomplish your goal? See, there, to me, even though it's a survey and it's part of his studies, there, by asking, how did you accomplish your goal, to me, is already thinking like a serial killer. Because serial killers have a career of killing. You know what I mean? They have goals. They have fantasies that they need to achieve. So I might be reading too much into that question, but that's just my thinking. When I saw that, I was like, goal. Please explain what you were thinking and feeling. And he said, how did you leave the scene? So if you apply these questions to what he's accused of doing and just everything that we know about the crime so far, interesting. Look at him before and look at him after in that smock from when he was arrested. So what did DeSales professors or teachers say about him? Boyce Jubilin, associate professor and chair of DeSales University psychology program, said that he was a little awkward with his peers and liked to work alone. So you can hear so many people say he liked to work alone. I can relate. Michelle Bolger, DeSales University professor who recommended Bryan to the PhD program, said, he's a brilliant student. I'm shocked as shit at what he's been accused of. I don't believe it, but I get it. I never saw him in person. See, online classes. I couldn't tell you how tall he was or how much he weighed. My only interaction with him was via email and Zoom. I didn't know anything about him, whether he was married, had a girlfriend, etc. This news is upsetting. I haven't slept at all since hearing about Bryan. He seemed normal to me, but then again, I only knew him from teaching him online. I didn't know anything personal about him. I believe he worked full-time like most of our graduate students do. She said that he was a great writer and a brilliant student. He was always perfectly professional when I had any interactions with him. In my 10 years of teaching, I've only recommended 2 students to a PhD program, and he was one of them. He was one of my best students ever. Everyone is in shock over this. So this is the professor who's making those quotes. She said, I was one of the professors who helped Bryan with his proposal on his graduate thesis, his capstone project. He did put out a routine questionnaire for his thesis. That's what we just read through just earlier. It looks weird. I understand from the public view, but in criminology, it's normal. It's a criminology theory called script theory. It's a normal theory on how and why criminals commit their crime. She says that he did not end up using any of the data that he gathered for his thesis, but instead, his graduate thesis was a narrative one based on the information due to time constraints. She went on maternity leave, and another professor took over when Bryan was completing his studies at DeSales.
He believes he's going to be exonerated. That's what he believes.
In March of 2022, as we now know, Bryan allegedly bought a K-bar knife, a sheath, and a sharpener. On April 1st of 2022, he applied for a research assistantship or internship with the Pullman Police Department. The research assistantship or internship would have involved working closely with law enforcement, potentially analyzing crime data or assisting with research projects. So see, his dream continues. He still wants to work with or as law enforcement. And it just seemed like he was so eager to do this, right? So this is obviously a bit redacted. It says, Bryan, great to meet you and talk with you as well, from Gary. That's Chief of Police Gary Jenkins. And Bryan had said to him on Tuesday, April 12th, Chief Jenkins, it was a great pleasure to meet with you today and share my thoughts and excitement regarding the research assistantship for public safety. I look forward to hearing from you. Best regards, Bryan. Oh my. And just wait for this letdown. He was one of 4 applicants interviewed for the position in April of 2022 with an online interview conducted by Chief Jenkins. He wanted to assist rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. He did not get the position. So just before he starts at WSU, he's applying in Washington at the Pullman Police Department for this internship. So it's kind of like a redo for that vocational program he got kicked out of as a teen. Maybe now he's like, okay, now I'm gonna fix that. I'm gonna do this. And he was so excited about it, but he didn't get it. And allegedly, it's rumored that 2 females were selected instead. So yeah, I feel like that is going to start adding to the motive. If he pursued one of the victims in the house and they rejected him, law enforcement rejected him, he's a teaching assistant, he's being rejected, students reject, you know what I mean? Like, I think this all added up very quickly for him. Let me know what you think. So, wow, if 2 females got the job instead, and can you imagine if it was 2 blonde females? I just feel like that would have just ticked him off to no end, and that's an understatement. The Pullman Police Department stated that they have no record of whether Kohberger was offered the position or formally rejected per an affidavit and public records request. The Pullman Police Department later played a significant role in Kohberger's arrest for the Idaho murders, creating an ironic twist given his prior application. You see what I mean?
These murders have shaken our community, and no arrest will ever bring back these young students.
Maybe it was just revenge against everything and everyone that ever hurt him. Meaning like, screw your law enforcement, listen, Pullman PD. Not that he's entitled to that position. He applied, he didn't get it. It's a normal part of life. But I think coming into the situation was so much pain, regret, just all of that. And he'd worked so hard to better his life, losing all that weight and becoming basically an athlete. He was running, he was doing kickboxing. Okay, and then he's like this teacher's assistant. He's been recommended for the PhD program. He's like, now I'm going to intern for law enforcement. I think if he can't understand that a girl in high school doesn't want to be with him, can you imagine how he could not understand why law enforcement wouldn't take him at that point? Yeah, and I don't have the answer for that. I don't know, but if that happened, obviously we know that he didn't actually get accepted. I just mean if it was 2 females that got accepted instead, yeah, that must have stung for him. So now at Washington State University, in the fall of 2022, he enrolled as a PhD student in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at WSU in Pullman, Washington. He was also a teaching assistant in a criminal law class. He was living in a university apartment called the Steptoe Apartments. Neighbors said that he wasn't always introverted, and he could sometimes have an outgoing demeanor that left people feeling impressed or put off. Some of them were like, it's a little bit much. So you can see his Washington driver's license there, which is redacted for what it needs to be. It's public record, just a disclaimer for YouTube. I'm not showing anything that I can't be showing. And then as well, here, he's no longer there, so the email is public record. Doesn't matter now to show that Bryan Kohberger, PhD student. Wow. So, yeah, he was actually doing well, but everything started crashing down pretty quickly before and after the murders occurred.
Bryan seemed like he was on the knife's edge between exhaustion and burnout, and at the time it was extremely difficult to tell which was which.
Like most others, Roberts learned on Friday that his graduate classmate in criminology may be the criminal behind 4 stabbing deaths.
It was very odd realizing that I just spent the last couple months sitting opposite in class to somebody who has such heavy allegations against them.
Neighbors said that he was oftentimes so chatty that they avoided him when they spotted him. He was one of those that are like, oh no, let's not start. That are like, how are you? Because he just talks and talks and talks and doesn't know when to stop. His relationship with these downstairs neighbors, a couple with small children, was apparently less friendly. The couple described him as an insomniac who kept them awake at night. They said that he paced intermittently and he sometimes ran his garbage disposal until 4 a.m. See, that behavior matches what they say he was doing when they arrested him at his parents' house, right? He was up and he was listening to a version of the Britney Spears song Criminal. That's got nothing to do with this. Who knows? Maybe he was listening to it here as well. But the point is he was wearing gloves and separating the trash into little Ziploc baggies and all of that. Bartenders apparently remembered him as normal in that time in Washington, which means that he was still going out there. He was going to bars. Who knows if he went to the corner club? Maybe he saw Madison Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves there, maybe even in the weeks before. We just don't know. Now, students at WSU described him as having a quiet but intense demeanor. They said he stared and didn't talk much, which made people uncomfortable, which again is the eye contact issue. It's too little, it's too much, all of that. He apparently made anti-LGBTQ remarks, which made people very uncomfortable. They felt that he always needed everyone to know that he was very smart or the smartest person in the room. Ben Roberts said that he seemed gregarious and outgoing. He definitely seemed a little more eager than some others that were present to go around and introduce himself. Another classmate said that he only talked about his interest in forensic psychology. And somebody else said he was an incredibly strong student and talked during class every time. He sat front and center, you see, always. And he was not hiding or talking back in the back or tucking back in the back. So he was like front and center, quite the presence in the classroom, right? Quite confident.
He was pretty strict as far as grading goes. When he came into class, he was very, not super mentally present. He would stand up at the front, look at the ground. He had a lot of like boilerplate responses he would give people rather than, maybe something he had thought up on the spot. It seemed like he would be, he'd come in knowing what he was going to say to like most interactions. And then when he would grade your papers, he would be grading you on what he ended up calling like a higher standard. But what it really felt like to us was he was grading us like he would have graded himself as a PhD student.
Benjamin Roberts, a former classmate, said he was very quick to offer his opinion and thoughts. He would describe things in the most complicated, perhaps academic way possible. He described him as highly intelligent. So many people throughout his life said he was very smart. He was very intelligent. He was highly intelligent. So it was like he was trying to convince people that he knew what he was talking about. He said to Benjamin, "I can go down to a bar or a club and pretty much have any lady I want." Which by the sounds of it, from his Tinder dates, I'm not so sure about that. I don't know what that's all about. But he's like, it's such a weird thing to say, like, guy to guy, like, you know what? Like bragging about that. Are you sure, dude? I can go down to a bar or a club and pretty much have any lady I want.
And I would ask him to stop, or I'd say, "What are you doing?" And he would be like, I'm not tickling you. And he would get very serious. I proceeded to pretend to throw up in the bathroom, hoping that, it would gross him out and he would leave. He had messaged me on Tinder and said that he was leaving and that he had a good time and that he would message me later. And then about an hour later, he messaged me and he said that I had good birthing hips, and I just never messaged him back after that.
Students said that they noticed, because they didn't obviously suspect him as the killer of the 4 students, but they said in hindsight, they noticed he became completely silent when the Idaho murders were discussed. They said he lost interest in teaching, and then he just gave them all high grades, because before that he was grading them all very, very harshly according to his PhD standards, and that was an issue. That was part of why he was part of this like improvement program. And they were saying, look, man, it's not really working out that you're a teacher's assistant and this is how you're treating the students. He was apparently grading the female students a lot harsher than anyone else. So they said after the murders, he's just like, yeah, basically A+ for everybody.
Definitely around then, he started grading everybody just 100s. Not like you pretty much, if you turned something in, you were getting high marks. And he stopped leaving notes. It was just, he seemed preoccupied is what I would have said at the time. And now, obviously, he seems like he was probably pretty preoccupied. But
4 days after the killings, remember the murders occurred on November 13th of 2022. So 4 days later, Kohberger arrived at his appointment in his black North Face jacket and was so friendly with staff members that they took notice. What appointment? It's the Pullman doctor's office, like a medical appointment, right? The receptionist at the office, who declined to give a name because discussing the interaction might violate medical privacy laws, said that Kohberger acted so friendly that it prompted her boss to comment. She said, "He's so nice and charming." She never says that about anybody, the receptionist told Insider. I was like, yeah, he really was. On my word. So like 4 days later, he's being like overly friendly. I wonder if in hindsight they noticed any injuries to his hands. Did he have any injuries, any bruises, anything? He scheduled an ordinary follow-up appointment for the spring semester. In December of 2022, Bryan Kohberger was fired from his teaching assistant position for failing to meet the norms of professional behavior. So that's important for the timeline, because some people think he was fired before the murders and then, in anger committed the murders. However, there were big problems. It was definitely, he was on the road to being fired as a teaching assistant, but he was only actually officially fired in December of 2022. He had repeat altercations with a criminal justice professor under whom he worked. He did not improve upon his conduct and performance, and he also exhibited concerning behavior around female students, including allegations of following one to her car. WSU faculty at the end of your meeting chose to pull Kohberger from the role, eliminating his funding for the PhD program. I wonder what his year would have looked like in 2023 if he was never caught, right? He drove home for the holidays with his dad.
Hello. How you doing? How y'all doing today? Good, good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could.
Leaving Washington on December 15th of 2022, WSU sent him a termination letter on December 19th, 3 days after the end of the finals for the fall semester. So he completed that fall semester, but yeah, that termination letter, that must have stung as well, right? And it's part of, I think, all of this. So yeah, we've seen these selfies before. Of course, he apparently took these when he was back at his parents' house while he was watching a whole bunch of YouTubers. He was watching things about Ted Bundy, and he was mimicking what he had seen. And I don't know. Do you think he relapsed at all? I just speculate. Like, he looks so, like, here. He doesn't look well at all. Definitely not stable at all here. Like, my goodness. And it was, you know, these selfies were taken. He was watching YouTube, and he was cleaning the car a lot. His sister started suspecting him, you know, thinking, oh, wow, he's like, he was driving a white Elantra. Interesting, with all the press conferences and, you know, all the coverage of the case. And yeah, on December 30th of 2022, they arrested him at his parents' house. So if you want to know more about the timeline, especially from the details shared in the Dateline episode, I'm going to link that video for you in case you've missed that. And of course, the playlist is in the description box for you if you want to check out any of the other videos that we've done. We've definitely looked at lots of different angles of this case since it happened. So I hope that you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, comment below. Make sure you subscribe as well so that you don't miss out when I make another video for you. And let me know what you'd like to know next. If there's something that I can dig up for us, I will do my very best. And yeah, let me know if you want me to go over the visual snow posts. And I will then describe what is visual snow and what did he post. And we can look at all of that if you're interested in that. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that there will be justice for the victims who lost their lives in just such a brutal way. I mean, it is terrifying to think about what happened to them. And a lot of details have come out since. And of course, I hope that the trial will happen. Jury selection, July 30th of 2025, and the trial for August 11th to November 7th of 2025. Let's hope that that happens, and let's hope that the victims' families can heal, because this is unimaginable. Thank you so much for watching. In the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you again very soon.